Welcome to Point Me to Jesus. I'm your host, Tara McCleary Reeves. I am so excited to introduce you today to a friend from South Carolina, Chris Cowan. Many of you may not know, but January 9th was Law Enforcement Appreciation Day across our nation. And Chris is representing those heroes and sheroes in blue today. He does a lot with mentorship. His history is amazing, the things that he has done, not only in the United States of America, but in continents that I'm going to allow him to explain to you a little bit more. But Chris, as we start, and welcome to the show, we're thrilled to have you.
I am so excited to be with you. I like I mentioned to you earlier, I get to see your dad today. So I'm like a kid at Christmas and I get to talk to you. The day could not get any better.
Well, thank you for all that you're doing for so many. And my dad certainly loves you and he's looking forward to being with y'all as well. I'm going to open us with this verse that I'm sure you're familiar with, Chris, but Micah 6:8 says this: He has shown you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. You know, Chris, you and your fellow men and women in blue are doing just that because we serve a God of justice. And we, as an audience, are wanting to say thanks to you for your service, for what you stand for. And we pray and want to ask you how we can continue to encourage the great work that you and your comrades are doing.
I think that, 2020 was a very difficult year for everybody, law enforcement included. And I think quite honestly, there's so many good people in our country that take the time to stop and just simply at a gas pump and say, thank you to a police officer, or, just simply that little effort of reminding law enforcement officers around this country that they are loved, they are important. And I use the old adage, if you remember there was a protest that occurred in Charlotte many years back, and
Yeah.
Charlotte's a city of 1 million people. Well, there was maybe 8,000 or 9,000 people that were involved in these protests. And you think about the percentage of that. And my point in that is this: to law enforcement, to the citizenry, it's a small group of people, in my humble opinion, that despise the police for whatever reason. And the fact is that, to answer your question, the best thing that can happen is just simply drop a note off at a station, or your local police station, your local sheriff's office, a little card, handwritten notes. We've got a young lady in Richland County. She's, I think, 12 or 13. And I think on a weekly basis, if not a daily basis, she is dropping off cards. She's dropping off baked cookies. She's, doing all these little things that her heart is pouring out, to her to do. But that just goes such a long way. And there's been times in my career where I've thought, you know what, I'm done. I can't do this. And then there's been something that's occurred where I've been involved and helped somebody, or somebody's needed assistance, or something's happened where I've gone on a call that, and you just reminded, wait a minute, God's got a calling, God's got a purpose. Goes back to what you and I said about think you got a plan and go ahead and tell God about it, because he's going to laugh and he's going to say, no, I got another plan for you. But I think that's the biggest thing.
Our audience wants to know about your service, because your incredible resume just speaks volumes of your heart submitted to the Lord, and in championing just godliness wherever you go. So tell us a little bit about your history.
Well, I think historically, up until about 5 minutes ago, I haven't always championed God's message. I've made many mistakes in my career and in my life, and not followed the Christian path and not followed God. And then I've realized that, wait a minute, I'm not doing that, and I need to come back. And I guess my point in saying that is I have had a lot of opportunity in my career because I've had mentors like Sheriff Leon Lott, who've really looked out for me and my family, and he does that for a lot of people. And he's really taken me under his wing and pulled me back a few times and pulled me in a few times, and, hit me on the back of the head with a 2x4, a couple of times. And, just the people like that are godly men. Paul Butler is another man who, in my opinion, has the Christian faith that has helped me along in my career, to keep me on the right track. And I have had a lot of opportunity, but humbly, I would say that it's not me. It's been those opportunities that God wanted me to be in a certain place at a certain time and be able to say certain things. And it's never been my word. It's been something that, it's something that he's had me doing. And interacting with you and your family has been a lift to my Christian faith. And Chris Hutniak, other people I could mention, that really helped me along my life. But I have had a lot of blessings and a lot of opportunity. I tell people all the time, I'm more blessed than I deserve, because that's the truth. I don't deserve the blessings that God's given me
None
because
of us do.
I'm not worthy of it, you know?
None of us
So
are. Yeah, well, tell us, how did you start? Did you always want to be in law enforcement, Chris, from a little boy? Uh,
no,
no?
no, no, it's funny because, you ask little boys and little girls, what do they want to be? And, you hear the football, player to the ballerina to the, president, I mean, from all mix. And I don't think I really knew what I wanted to do. In fact, I think I'm probably still trying to figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up. Thankfully, my wife keeps me on the right track. But,
Yeah.
I think that I didn't know. To answer your question, I went to University of South Carolina. I was in the Navy ROTC program, and if God hadn't put me in that Navy ROTC program, I would never have graduated college. Never. Right. I needed that structure and I needed that support. And I was able to go into the Navy and do some things there, and then coming out of the Navy, coming back to South Carolina, it was a door that God opened, and it's just it wasn't what I expected at any stretch of the imagination. And there's been points throughout my career, 28 years in law enforcement, to say, I thought I would have been doing this in law enforcement or that in my life. And you know, I today, I look at where I am today, and thankful with people like Sheriff Leon Lott, who have, believed in me and given me the support that I needed to be where I am, and doing things like managing a budget and managing special operations units and
Yeah.
doing different things that I just never envisioned. No, I so to answer your question, if I go back 30, 40 years, I would never have thought, but again, it goes back to what's God's plan, and do we really trust his plan? And
Yeah.
I've been really bad about that in my career, of trusting the direction that he's wanted me to go in, and he's opened doors, and I've resisted. No, I got this, I'm in control. And we do that so often.
Yeah. Tell us about your work in Queensland.
Wow, what a blessing that was. So, the sheriff allowed me to go to the FBI National Academy, which is a law enforcement program for executives. And in that opportunity, I met a beautiful man named Mark Plath. Mark was from the Queensland Police Service, and Mark and I established a friendship, a really very, very close, tight relationship. And he invited me to come over and be part of a leadership program that they were developing and that they were building in Queensland for their police service. And I was able to spend a couple of weeks there, doing some teaching and doing some learning. And that partnership developed into a relationship with another beautiful man, Wade Fuller, Craig Huxley, and some others in that area. And so we've established this friendships, that have really built some really solid foundations for some of the things that I like to get out and talk about. And I was able to go to the Australian Institute for Police Management and get my graduate certificate. And so it goes back to the premise by why, I've asked your dad to come speak with a group, why I'm speaking with some different groups, and it's about the difference between being transactional and relational in leadership. I've been really bad in my career about being a transactional leader, a mission oriented, objective oriented box checker that constantly wants to get the mission done and get things accomplished and check those boxes. And I really have tried to, over the last probably 6 months, a year, really realized, it was like this epiphany to me, like, dude, you've been a transactional leader your whole career. You've been successful, but are you being significant? And so I'm trying to develop that program and that for myself, to learn from my mistakes. Because I think as a leader, I think that's the biggest thing that we do as leaders is do two things. One, we go to God, we go to the best leadership book that's ever been written, which is the Bible.
Right.
And two, we trust ourselves to realize that we've got to be relational
Yes.
in our leadership. We have to be intentional and not transactional. And those are the mistakes that I've made. I've made a ton of them in my career, that's for sure.
I tell you, it sounds so much like a book that I was encouraged to read in seminary, Chris. And I'm so glad you're bringing this up because it's so pivotal when you look back at Jesus's ministry and how God just assigned him to be with those 12 men. The Lost Art of Disciple Making is just a beautiful book, and I'll have to send
Mm.
you a copy. And another one that I love is The Master Plan of Evangelism. And
Oh,
again,
wow.
it's that relational aspect of Jesus investing in those 12, and then the duplication, the multiplication that occurs after that, you had exchanged with some emails. And I want my audience to know that anytime that I exchange an email with a male, I always copy my husband on it. So you probably noticed that. We do that to protect our marriage. That's one of the hedges of protection. And my husband pointed out in one of your titles that was so great, and he is in leadership, he's in corporate America, and he pointed out just how wise you are to know the difference between shepherding and sheep herding.
That's interesting because I think this is another example of where I think I've failed in my Christian walk as well as my leadership over the period of time, is understanding that difference and what was I, what am I, what do I want to be, and that is really part of what we try to do when we're talking with organizations and doing some coaching, is talking about that difference and getting people to understand you can be both. So a shepherd and a sheep herder are different in the stance of this. Is you obviously have a flock of sheep, and it could be 12 people, it could be 200 people, it could be, whatever your flock is at that time, whatever team that God has put in front of you. And the question you have to ask yourself is, if that team is in a field, the field being your business, whether it's law enforcement or whether it's selling widgets, and that team is in that field, in that arena, are you on the fence? Are you overlooking and overwatching, and are you being protective and controlling? Or are you out in the middle where you can be involved, you can be relational, you can be supportive, and you're with the flock, you're guiding the flock, but you're not deciding for the flock. You're not, you don't need a staff. That's something that I've had a lot of difficulty realizing, is, the difference between being punitive and being supportive. And, you have to, as a shepherd or a sheep herder, you have to decide which is best for you for different scenarios and different situations. Yeah. But the most significant leader, not the successful leader. We can be successful because we make a lot of money. We can be successful because we live a long life and we build up all these different things. But you have to move into deciding, are you going to be significant, from success to significance? Yeah. And to do that as a sheep herder, you're controlling things, you're herding people together, you're bringing, you're juggling different balls in the air, and you're bringing your team together in the arena. But if you're a shepherd, you're coaching, you're supporting, you're developing capacity, capabilities, strategic, dynamic. I mean, all of those items that you really have to get into if you want to lead and not manage. Yeah. And I think, me personally, I've been a manager and a supervisor most of my career. And I think we do that a lot in law enforcement, where we manage people and communities, and we try to control things because we're type A personalities. Yeah. Being that shepherd is really what I've strived to get better about, especially late in my career, and trying to realize that I've failed in some of those areas, and some of our failures are our best teaching points.
Well, that's so important. It's an important reminder for all of us. And, I'm the product of a mom and dad that are incredibly relational. I have said before that I could not go to the grocery store and get out within 15 minutes if I were with my mom, especially because she is talking to every cashier, every bagger, the deli man, it was just, you've met my parents, and my dad's the same way. They just don't meet strangers, and every heart that the Lord brings into their path, they're going to encourage and love on in some way. Now they have their moments. We all do, and especially as they get older and get a little bit more set in their ways. But I've been blessed to watch that example, as I know, your children have been. And I love the fact that you are evaluating where you are at this particular season in life, and you're willing to course correct. I think the beauty of the prodigal son was the fact that, he repented. He didn't continue down the path that he was going, but he recognized that this is a dead end street, and he turned toward his father. And I just love the picture of the father running to meet the son. And, as parents or as leaders or in whatever role the Lord has us, that unconditional love that we're to extend, that grace, that peace, that recognition that there but for the grace of God go I think you are living that. And I think your children, your wife sees the humility in that. I think we all do. And that's something, again, marks a great leader. I think it was Churchill, didn't he say that success is going from failure to failure with the greatest amount of enthusiasm? Sometimes,
Enthusiasm. Yes, absolutely. But
you know,
there's you've got people and position. So I think that's something that we get confused sometimes is you have a position in life, maybe like you said, in the chapter of life that you're in, may
yeah,
not be the position in your organization, but where you are positionally in your life at that moment. And then you have the people. But then on top of that, you have to kind of bring it together with a couple of P's, which I like, is which is passion and priorities.
yeah,
And so, how are you going to bring those two together? Because I think the biggest mistake that I've made and that I'd like to point out to others is that what is our vision and values? What are our beliefs?
mm,
What is our passion?
yeah,
And I think it goes back to what Martin Luther King said, which is a blueprint. Do you have a solid blueprint? Do you have a purpose? Do you have values and vision? And are you making sure that you have a sound and solid, specific direction for yourself spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, physically? And I think that's one of the things that we miss out on all the time is we forget. You watch all these football games on TV.
yeah,
In my opinion, corporate leadership should be watching these football players or basketball players or whatever sports you want to pick and realizing that in corporate America and in law enforcement, we're athletes. We have to hydrate our minds, our bodies, our souls, our spirit. We have to make sure we're feeding our mind, our body, and our spirit. And we have to make sure that we're studying in order to be better so that we can play the game. Put me in, coach. I'm ready to play. The question is, are you doing all those things to sustain from success to significance?
yeah. And I'm the daughter-in-law of a former NFL head coach, and my husband can tell you that when Poppy was coaching, he spent so much time studying the game plan of the other
Yes.
team, watching films of the other team to kind of learn their habits and the ways that they would go to be prepared when they were on that field facing each other, that he knew enough about their strategy to
Yes.
circumvent that. Tell us a little bit, Chris, because you also have a history in mentoring college athletes.
I think if you're working with an athlete in the football arena, the soccer arena, or if you're working with an athlete, what I call a corporate athlete, and I can't take credit for that term. I don't know where that came from. It's just something I use, so I don't want to plagiarize something somebody else has copyrighted. But I use that term because I think that we've worked with athletes, but it goes to this: the best laid strategy is ideal. You've got to have a strategy. You've got to have a strategic plan, whether you're a football team or whether you're a corporation, a multi-million-dollar corporation or a mom and pop, you've got to have a strategy. And
Yeah,
so as a corporate athlete or an athlete in the arena of football or whatever, you've got to have a strategy. The issue comes in this, and I think there's a lot of Christian coaches. Tony Dungy is one of them. Others that you've heard speak. And the fact of the matter is, culture destroys strategy every single time, hands down. And what you have to do is get into the mind of an athlete, because 80% of the game is resilience in their mind and their heart. It's not their physical capacity, it's their mental and emotional capacity to be successful and significant on the field.
yeah,
So you have to develop a culture of that. And I think one of the things that we're trying to do, people like Paul Butler and Chris Hutton, other people that are doing similar types of work, are trying to get into people's minds and get them to understand that culture will destroy strategic planning every single time. You can have a mission statement and objectives up on the wall all day long, but if you don't have key performance indicators
yeah,
and you don't have culture that's going to support those things,
yeah,
you're going to fail every time. And there's
absolutely.
been law enforcement agencies in this country, and there's been governments in this in the local, state, and federal level that have imploded, and companies that have imploded because they haven't had the culture to support
Yeah.
that strategic plan.
Who would you say, Chris, is your hero of the faith from God's word if you could only choose one?
And actually, I made a note because you talked to me about that, and I wanted to kind of think about it. But Paul is actually who I think realistically would be my biblical mentor or coach, because he understood people have different gifts.
Yeah,
He sought to unify diversity.
yeah,
He sought maturity personally, even though he didn't achieve it
Yeah.
completely. And I'm not suggesting that I'm anywhere near Paul's level of Christianity, because I'm not. He always sought reconciliation. He always sought being a servant at heart. He was planting seeds,
Yeah.
which goes back to one of the big principles that John Gordon's book, The Seed. And
Yeah.
it's about taking that seed and where you plant it and how you harvest it and cultivate it and all that. But Paul loved people, and I love being around people. I love people. Um, you know, I think that, Paul was a skilled writer. He was a skilled debater.
Yeah.
So all these things are kind of bouncing around in my head, thinking about why it would be Paul. And I think it is. I think that's, everybody always, the canned answer, in my opinion, is always, well, Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, yes, but let's break it down to a step further and I guess this is the question I would ask you or anybody else is, are you living a legacy or are you leaving a legacy?
Oh, that's so.
And I think, unfortunately, I think what I've been doing is I think I've been trying to leave a legacy instead
Yeah.
of live it.
Yeah.
Leaving a legacy is you build goals for other people. You have this, what you want to say is, okay, well, I'm going to have an obituary that's going to say all these things. And this is what I left my children. And this is what I left my community.
Yeah.
But why wait? Why wait and build and leave a legacy?
Yeah.
Why not try to live it and be a listener, be intentional, be relational? Somebody told me, and I don't know who this was, so I can't take credit for it, but it was about understanding life backwards and then living it forward
Hmm.
and creating value, vision, and purpose. And what a thing to strive for. I'm nowhere near that by any stretch of the imagination, but what's something to strive for is to live your legacy, not leave your legacy.
Yeah.
We have to release control and trust God.
What does what difference has he made in your life, Chris?
Oh my gosh.
I
And
mean,
that
just
would be, I mean, pick any of 1,000 in the last week.
yeah.
There's so many things that, blessings that he's given to me and to my family, and, the people that he's put in my life, your dad, people like a friend of mine, Chris Hutniak, and, Paul Butlers and Sheriff Lott. I mean, people like that God has put before me to help me both, epitomizing what it is to be a true Christian, and the direction that I should be going in, that I don't do every day. And
Yeah.
so there's been countless, the opportunity to speak with you, the opportunity to speak with groups like, Jim Hudson Automotive Group was a Christian based, um, corporation that is the largest, the most successful automotive group in the entire country.
Yeah.
And being around Christian based organizations like that, like you said, iron sharpens iron. These are biblical Christian executives who are trying to improve themselves personally and professionally and spiritually.
Yeah.
I personally think you have to differentiate the three: personal, professional, and spiritual.
Yeah.
Because I think if you try to lump spiritual and personal together, I think you miss the message of God.
Yeah.
But I think that being around organizations like that, and God providing that opportunity for me to learn, I think one of the mistakes that a lot of speakers make is that they get up in front of a group and they present all these facts. They
Yeah.
present how they're all of these things, and they're the experts. I'm not the expert in anything. But
Yeah.
just be completely frank with you. I believe that God puts on my heart to messages, and I think more often than not, those messages change because of something he's wanting me to say to somebody in the group that needs to hear something, whether it's, Isaiah 6:8, here I am, send me, coming up with something that would never have,
Yeah.
but that's, I think, the
That's
blessing to me is
beautiful though. And it shows you the maturity that you have to be discerning, and to listen to his voice. And I love what you said about the spiritual versus the personal, that sometimes the personal, we think it's in our efforts and in our doing, but
yes.
no, the foundation is it's he's the one that draws us to himself. In closing, Chris, in light of this 2021 year, and I'm so
Mhm.
thankful that the Lord brought you, and especially during this first month of this first year. And I think a lot of us have already felt just in the last few weeks that perhaps we've already lived 365 days in seven.
Ooh,
But what are your, and instead of getting discouraged about the circumstances and the surroundings of our times, I know where your encouragement lies, and that's in the unchanging truth of the Word of God. How are you applying that today in light of the circumstances, in light of the fact that some days I know in law enforcement, you have to feel that there is a bullseye on your back.
And
How are you getting through these times? And how can you encourage our listeners that may feel a little bit down and discouraged that their resolutions have already
yeah,
gone up
wow.
in smoke?
Yeah. Well, okay. So it's funny that you mentioned up in smoke. There's a video out there of a dumpster on fire that's going through. It's a flooded street, and this dumpster is floating down the street. And this fire is burning in this dumpster, and everybody. I've seen that more times than I care, and people need to stop. I'm sorry. I totally disagree with the thought that 2020 was a dumpster fire.
Yeah,
It was a bad year. It was a difficult year.
yeah,
But
I
here's
agree.
the thing.
Yeah,
Think about the opportunistic environment that 2020 provides us in 2021. Look at all of the things that went right. It goes back to John Gordon's discussion about hunting the good.
yeah,
Find the good. And I know that a lot of people died and a lot of people have been sick and a lot of people lost family members. I'm not trying to be unsympathetic or empathetic and passionate about people. I guess my thought process is, are you taking advantage of the opportunity knowing somebody's sick to make sure that they're going to heaven? Are
right.
you taking advantage in the opportunistic environment that it has for you to improve your relationship with Jesus Christ?
Yeah,
And I guess my thought process there is 2021, we can smash 2021. It can be a huge success because we can be not successful, but significant for other people. I think God, this is just me, I think God is telling us, wake up, smell the coffee, put your bootstraps on, put your big boy panties on and your girl panties on and put them on. Let's go. And get out and get in the fight. Get
yeah,
in the fight for Christianity.
yeah,
Support others. Don't
yeah,
make it about you, make it about other people. What can you do in 2021 to help your neighbor? I saw a video the other day. A UPS person was delivering something, and there was a snow shovel, and he shoveled the walkway. Took him 5 minutes to do.
yeah,
Just something, some small act of kindness. And if we go back to that, that's what our country was founded on. Our United States of America was founded on helping others,
yeah,
doing for others more than you do for yourself.
yeah,
And we've got to get back to that in this country. There are enough groups that are trying to tear us apart, that are purposely wanting diversity and
yeah,
or separation. But
yeah,
we can't let them get that handle. We've got to be the voice of truth and the voice of the republic that was founded, which is about unification
yeah,
and doing for others. And don't worry about doing it for your entire state or your entire country. Do it for your neighborhood.
yeah,
Do it for, like you said, the bagger. You know, I see it all the time at the grocery store. You got a bagger there, and people treat them like dirt.
yeah,
Drives me absolutely crazy.
yeah,
That's the person that you should be treating with the most respect
yeah.
because they are working to better themselves.
You have heard today from a true champion, not only of the faith, but also of just law enforcement. This is a man that is willing to put his life and stand in the gap for you. And Chris, we cannot thank you enough for your willingness to come. You encourage us on a daily basis, but to encourage us right now that we'll be able to share this with our friends, and the words of wisdom that you have spoken to us will not be forgotten. And I pray that we will truly take these truths to heart and apply them.